In this movie, we'll take a look at the rotate tool, and I think it's at this point that the value of the transformation origin really becomes obvious. I'll go ahead and press Control A or Command A on the Mac in order to select everything I've made so far, and I'll press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of it. And I'm just going to go ahead and switch to a different color, maybe this shade of green here, and I'll go ahead and take the line weight up to 3 points. And I'll once again select the rectangle tool, which of course you can get by pressing the M key, and I'll Alt or Option click right there at the intersection of those two guides. And 100 by 100 points is going to work just fine. So we'll go ahead and click OK. All right, now I'll press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool. And just so that we have something to compare, I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to bring up the Move dialog box. And I'll go ahead and set the horizontal value to 100 points and vertical to 0 points. And I'll click Copy. And then I'll select the original, press the Enter key or the Return key again, and change the horizontal value to -100. All right, now let's say I want to make a kind of pattern of diamond-shaped petals. I'll go up to the Effect menu, choose Distort and Transform, and choose the Transform command. And then I'll go ahead and turn on the Preview checkbox, and I'll just go ahead and rotate this guy 45 degrees like so. And this time around, we don't need Scale, Strokes, and Effects to be turned on, so I'll just go ahead and turn that off. And notice that I'm rotating the shape around its center, as indicated by this little point inside the reference point matrix, at which point I'll click OK in order to accept that change. Now I want to stretch this shape, and I have to do that in a separate pass, because notice, if I were to click on the word Transform to bring back my Transform Effect dialog box, and let's say I turn on the Preview checkbox and I change the horizontal value to 120 and the vertical value to 70, which is what I'm ultimately looking for, you can see that Illustrator is applying the scale before the rotation, and that's not what I want. So I'll just go ahead and cancel out of there, and instead I'll apply a new transform effect by going to the Effect menu, choosing Distort and Transform, and choosing the Transform command once again. And I do want to apply a new effect, so I'll go ahead and click this button, at which point I'll now change the horizontal scale value to 120%, and I'll take the vertical value down to 70% and turn on the Preview checkbox in order to produce this effect here. All right, now let's rotate a handful of these guys by returning to the Effect menu, and if you like, instead of dropping all the way down to Distort and Transform and choosing Transform, which is going to zero out all the options like usual, you can instead choose this command right there, Transform ... which is going to bring back your last applied settings. I'll go ahead and click Apply New Effect once again, and then I don't actually want to repeat these settings, and so I'll change both the horizontal and vertical values back to 100%. And I'll set the angle value to, let's say, 45 degrees. Turn on the Preview checkbox so we can see what's happening. I want to rotate this shape around its middle center, like so. And then I'm going to crank the copies value up to, let's say, a total of 7, so that we have 8 diamonds in all. Now, I don't want them to overlap each other, so I'm going to have to move them apart. And so the first thing I'll do is change the horizontal move value to, let's say, -10. That doesn't quite do what I want. So I'll also change the vertical move value to -10, and that's just plain wrong. So what I need to do is just sort of arrow this value until things look more or less correct, which is happening someplace around a vertical value of -23 or -24, at which point I'll go ahead and click OK to accept that change. All right, now compare that to how much more authoritatively you can operate using the old school rotate tool. So I'll start off by selecting the shape right there, and then I'll switch to the rotate tool, which you can get by pressing the R key. And with that tool selected, I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to bring up the Rotate dialog box. So anytime you have a transform tool selected, pressing Enter or Return brings up its dialog box, complete with numerical options. And so what I'm going to do is just change the angle value to 45 degrees and click OK. And then I'll switch back to the Scale tool, which I can get by pressing the S key, of course, and I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac, and I'll go ahead and change the horizontal value to 120% and the vertical value to 70%, which automatically turns on the non-uniform radio button. So you don't have to worry about that. As long as we're here, go ahead and turn off the Scale Corners checkbox, even though, of course, in our case, it's not going to make any difference, and then click OK. All right, now what we want to do is switch back to the Rotate tool, and then you want to click to set a transformation origin. And I'm going to click, let's say, right about here along that horizontal guideline. And now notice I can drag around that origin point in order to rotate my diamond. And so a couple of things to know here. The farther you move your cursor away from the origin, the more fine-tuned control you're going to get. Also, if you want to constrain your rotation to an increment of 45 degrees, go ahead and press and hold the Shift key, as you see me doing right now. And then, if you also want to create a copy of the shape as you rotate it, then press and hold the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac, at which point you'll get that double arrowhead cursor, and then keep those keys down until after you release. All right, now I want to create another duplicate of this shape. And to do that, I'll go up to the Object menu, choose Transform. Notice, by the way, that we've got a Rotate command, we have a Scale command. These commands bring up the very same dialog boxes that we've been seeing when the Rotate and Scale tools are selected. But the command I'm going to choose is Transform again, which also has a keyboard shortcut of Control-D for Duplicate. And so as you can see, Illustrator goes ahead and both rotates and duplicates the shape like so. All right, now just go ahead and press Control or Command-D as many times as it takes to fill out my pattern. Now, the great thing about this static approach is that if you go ahead and zoom in, you will see that everything is aligned perfectly, especially along this horizontal guideline here. Whereas where the dynamic effect is concerned, we may or may not be dead on. It's looking pretty darn good until we start zooming way in, at which point you can see that things are ever so slightly off. All right, so I'll just go ahead and press Control-0 or Command-0 on the Mac to zoom out. And that is how you create a static rotation with a high degree of authority using the old school Rotate tool here inside Illustrator.